Having your home invaded by a violent criminal ranks up with everyone's worst fears. I'm David Bradley, and this is Self-Defence for Women. What we're going to do now is take you through the defences step by step. Once we've done the explanation, however, we'll show you the defence at full speed and at full power so you can get an idea of how effective it can be. Now, when faced with the type of attack that you saw in the intro sequence, Diana's priority must be to protect her throat and her head. There's an old adage that says you can't fight back if you're unconscious, and that's what protecting our head and throat is all about. She does a couple of things to ensure that this occurs. Firstly, she'll drop her chin to her chest. This does a couple of things. It makes it tougher for an attacker to get his hands right around her throat, and it also makes it very difficult for the attacker to get his thumbs and press into her windpipe. Not only does she do that, but she raises her hands in front of her face to protect her head. Now, the reason why she does this is because many attackers, once they get you in this position, will start to strike and strike repeatedly at your head. And what we're trying to do here is limit the damage that you'll receive once he starts striking. Now, notice I said limit the damage. I think we need to be really realistic here and understand that when you've got a large, strong attacker striking you repeatedly and as hard as he can, there's no way that you can protect yourself entirely against the force of these strikes. But what you can do is ensure that you buy yourself enough time that you can start a ruthless and rapid counterattack. And that's what we're going to move on to now. So let's look at some options. When we're talking about counter strikes, one of the first things that Diana can do is drive her hands forward so she drives deep into her attacker's eyes with her thumbs. Now, people feel a little bit uncomfortable about gouging, but if I can put it to you this way, think about the alternatives if the attacker was to beat you and the effect that they could have on you and your loved ones. The gouge is such an effective technique because the last time I checked, no matter how big the guy was, there was no muscles over the eyes that protected that part of the body. So even someone who's small in stature like Diana can get a really great effect out of gouging deep and then ripping out hard through the eyes. Once she's finished that gouge, she can then take hold of her opponent's hair. Or in Gary's case, if they haven't got any hair, she can take any part of the upper body or neck there. What she's going to do then is strike repeatedly into her attacker's nose and face using what we call a hammer fist technique. Let's look at that procedure again. From the start, Diana is going to shoot out with her hands and gouge deep and hard into the eyes and then rip away. She'll take her opponent's head, pulling it down, and then use the hammer fist technique to drive heavily and repeatedly into her attacker's nose and cheekbone area. Now let's take a bit of a closer look at that hammer fist technique so you can perform it to best effect. When performing the hammer fist strike, make sure you keep your elbow roughly at 90 degrees. Now you want to strike with the meaty part of the bottom of the fist. That way you don't do yourself any injury. And just like Diana's going to do here, make sure you drag your opponent's head down so you can drive down hard into the strike, harder and harder. Okay, now let's see that complete self-defense sequence at full speed and full power so you get to gauge the effectiveness of the techniques. Let's take a look at a variation on that technique where the attacker's still choking but not striking Diana at the time. The first thing that Diana's going to do now is take her cupped hands and strike hard over her attacker's ears. This is a great technique because if you can clap your hands, then you can do this technique. The way it works is that we force air into the ear canals of our opponent, causing great pain and getting him to lose his balance. From there, that strike sets up really beautifully again for Diana to gouge hard into the eyes. But this time what we're going to do is she's going to grab the head and she's going to start to use her knees into her attacker. Okay, let's see that sequence again. The first thing that Diana's going to do, again, is reach out and cup hard over her attacker's ears. She'll then gouge into the eyes, remember to rip out, take hold of her attacker by whatever means she can, and start to knee hard and repeatedly into his sternum. Let's take a bit of a closer look at that kneeing action to make sure you can get it as hard as you possibly can. When we're undertaking the knee strike, Diana wants to take hold of whatever part of her opponent she can get and raise her knee as high as she can into the pad. But she doesn't just do that. To increase the power of the strike, she's going to drag me down into the strike, doubling her power. And remember, she's not just going to strike once, she's going to strike repeatedly, just like this. Okay, let's see that whole sequence at full speed and full power, in particular so you can see how hard those knee strikes are. Remember, when you're performing these self-defense techniques, it's critical that you escape at the first opportunity. Don't hang around to see what effect those strikes of yours have. Get out of the house and run to people. Make as much noise as possible. The chances are really limited that your attacker is going to follow you because you increase his chances of getting caught. And while we're on that subject, let's talk about the importance of prevention. When it comes to home invasion, one of the things that you need to make sure you do is ensure that you have good locks on both your windows and doors. And whilst it sounds obvious, you also need to make sure that you use them and that everything remains securely tightened up. I know it sounds obvious and common sense, but unfortunately it's not always common. Also, if someone comes to your door and wants to gain access, make sure you're completely satisfied as to their identification. If you're in doubt, have them wait outside and call the company to establish that they are who they say they are. Finally, if you've never ever given any thought to what you would do if you were faced with situations just like these, then now's the time to do it. How would you get out of the house? Where would you go? What are your escape routes? Think now, and that will save you a lot of grief when the time comes. Till next time, stay alert and stay safe.